Welcome to Breathe California TV. Breathe California is the lung health organization for California. Each year we help about 150,000 people just here in the Santa Clara Valley with breathing difficulties, asthma, pulmonary problems, a wide variety of breathing difficulties. It's 40% of the population of our area because of unhealthy air, which we've all seen in recent weeks. So this week, my guest is Dan Tombrick. He's been helping in producing the show for the last few months. We're going to talk about what Breathe California does and how it impacts your health. So see you in 30 seconds.
I have asthma, and so asthma, I can't do that many sports because I wheeze and then I have to take my inhaler. I can't do a lot of things other kids can do. What I learned at asthma camp is how to treat your asthma and don't hold back if you have asthma. Breathe California has made it easier for me to play sports and do other things that I couldn't do before.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. You may not know it, but you're breathing unhealthy air. Everybody in the Bay Area does, and this impacts your lungs, and unhealthy air, whether it be from smoking or from energy use, is the biggest single cause of death. Few people realize that it's not just lung health, but it's the biggest single cause of heart damage. And I'm pretty convinced there's an awful lot of cancer being caused by it. So this program pretty normally does not talk about people that have already gotten sick or injured or have allergies or asthma, even though Breathe California gets funded to take care and help people with those issues. But we generally talk about how to prevent problems. Obviously, that's reducing your smoking and cutting back on energy use. Today, my guest is Dan Tombrick, who's been producing the show for 4 months?
Yeah, 4 months about.
Yeah. So Dan is an outstanding student in the Environmental Studies Department, San Jose State. And if you liked our previous programs, you can thank Dan. If you haven't liked them, blame me. So welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So what in the heck are you doing here?
Well, I've decided to come on and help you describe a little bit about Breathe California and what they do, and maybe discuss a little bit about your background as well.
So I should ask you questions about what Breathe California does?
No, I'm going to go ahead and ask you a few first.
So maybe the difference is that you've been helping us for the last couple of years, and I've pathetically been doing it for 45.
Something like that. Well, I just wanted to first find out a little bit, if you describe to the audience briefly, what the organization is. It's a nonprofit, we know that. But what do they do in the prevention of lung health and also the treatment as well? I guess is what we're not quite as focused on, but the prevention was a big deal for Breathe California.
Well, just before we started the show, we were talking with another San Jose State Environmental Studies student, Mary Yang. She goes out and does indoor air quality inspections. So one of the things that most of us don't realize is while the air outside is unhealthy, that in California we average 3 to 5 times as bad indoors.
Now, this is regarding VOCs and things like that. These are volatile organic compounds. They're found in your sofa, your bed, your mattress, all types of. It could be your countertop even. There's things in your house that are rugs, carpeting.
Any new construction, it's amazing how many of these glues that they're using, and for several years they release. I mean, I feel the same way about the problems associated with portables that are often used in our schools.
Now, why don't we talk for a second about what reason are we putting these chemicals into our products in our homes? Well, they claim to be fire retardants, and that's what my problem is with these chemicals, is that they aren't actually really fire retardant. they don't actually do what they're meant to do, and that's to prevent the fire from spreading. They're supposedly say slow it down, but they can actually accelerate the fires. So it's not proven yet that it's a sure safety measure inside the home. And what it was a big marketing deal way back when for the big companies, big corp, to be able to put these chemicals and make it a profitable situation. So it comes down to money, in my opinion, again.
Well, and they wouldn't put them in there just for the hell of it. So to be able to say it retards a fire, you highlighted the key
warning
point.
label, yeah.
Well, but that it will slow down a fire, and that's what they're expected to do. But they're typical of all of the kind of chemicals that we have around our home, or for that matter, in your school. One of the things that we do is we go out and do free testing in schools to make sure that there aren't problems for kindergartners or high school students in the space they use. I was pretty aghast about 10 years ago. For 2 years, San Jose State had me teach in a portable, and it was off of 10th Street, which had very heavy traffic, and I still was adamant about leaving the doors open the whole time because I thought it was going to be healthier for
some circulation
all of us
in there
inside of it.
Yeah.
So Breathe California is now about 104, 105 years old in this area. It started out as the Tuberculosis Association.
Oh, okay.
Because bacterial disease in our lungs was such a stupendous problem. And amusingly, I say this because tuberculosis is back with a vengeance.
And the funny thing about it, if I can interrupt you just for a
Sure.
second, is with TB, a lot of the commercials you see on TV nowadays about different medications you can take, a lot of them TB is like the first thing they mention as a big scare or a difficulty with that medication. A possible side effect could be an increase in TB infection, and they worry about people that might have traveled to different parts of the world and things like that. So it's interesting.
Well, one of the cool things about Dan is he has as much experience as I am, and the interaction's exactly what we were trying to accomplish on this show with your experience. So with tuberculosis, the invention of penicillin and its start towards widespread use around 1945, the end of World War II, everybody thought it was gone. And we had to change our name to something more broad-based.
And appropriate, yeah.
And what happened is the bacteria evolve a heck of a lot quicker than we can invent new forms of penicillin, whatever they may be called, ending with "cillin." And so it is back. And it is an incredibly serious problem. One of the difficulties is with tuberculosis these days is people take their medicine, and when they're feeling good, they stop, which may mean it's okay for them, but it allows the bugs, the bacteria,
To evolve.
and to propagate. And even though you may not get it again, your very breathing is spreading it in the
To
community.
other people, yeah.
Another big problem, particularly in Eastern Europe, has been the lack of resources to treat it. And so there are a number of really serious forms that we picked up. An additional problem that's been very serious is Governor Pete Wilson quit paying for health care for immigrants from outside of this country.
I was going to say there's got to be an underlying issue there, yeah.
And what happened is that meant that we had employers with no problem at all hiring and putting these people to work.
Perfectly sick people.
Well, and as a result, we've injected that into our communities. You know, if you're a genius and you can figure out some way to eliminate illegal immigration when employers keep hiring these people.
And there's travel around the world, we got to consider that too.
Absolutely. I mean,
Transportation's now spreading these germs and bacteria a lot faster.
a wonderful movie called Outbreak. And I don't know what in the heck the disease was. It probably, in fact, it was Ebola, which is bacterial. But the point is that you can have somebody in the Congo in Africa, and he's in San Francisco the next day.
Yeah.
And
Or
that,
even
that
products.
program was set in the Bay Area.
Or
the movie.
in your classes, we've seen videos as well about how the transportation brings just the bacteria itself in different forms of food or whatnot around the world, and it also spreads that way a lot faster.
Yeah, it's amazing how the changes in our society and the evolution of bacteria can result in problems. You know, 30 years ago, we had a problem that suddenly developed called Legionnaire's disease. And what happened is there's an American Legion convention in Philadelphia, and 15, 20 people died. And what it was is a very common bacteria in water when it is around water which has been cooled in air conditioning systems. You know, if you have a humid spot like Philadelphia, it pulls the water out, it may cling there, the bacteria form in it, and some of them get into the air supply, and our lungs couldn't cope with it.
And wasn't there a water contamination situation in Chicago, I think, back when too, and they also had a similar situation where it was more water related, water quality related, but the same thing applied. We thought we were killing the bugs, but we weren't really killing them, and they were getting to the people. So as usual, it was the weaker, the elderly and the sick or the disabled that were getting sick the easiest.
Well, and you're highlighting the key problem in terms of lung issues is we talk all the time about smoking and air pollution. What they're doing is disabling, knocking out some of the functions or the ability or degrading your system. Obviously, the young up to 15, or when I turned 50, the American Association of Retired People says, you're an old guy. Well, that meant my lungs are more susceptible, or if you have natural allergies or asthma, those people are even more susceptible to problems.
No, I fall into that category. That's the category I fall into. I'm a former, actually a lifetime asthmatic and former cigarette smoker, 5 years. So, you know, I learned my lesson the hard way, and now I'm dealing with the pulmonary issues. So I'm a classic person for Breathe California myself.
Well, it really does pay to be attentive to your lungs, because 95% of us breathe unhealthy air.
And I personally believe that, you know, I was a 70s, 60s baby, so I believe that I grew up as a child in the 70s. I think the VOCs were bad back then, and I think the air pollution was poor too, and I think that might have been a contributor to my asthma, because it was when I was younger that I had it the worst. I think that's very interesting. You know, I do have lung breathing problems now, but they're not like they were. They are bad, but they're different than they were. They told me I'd never play sports when I was a kid. That's how bad it was back then. So it was the 70s, before the Clean Air Act and everything came in, I think was a tough time for air pollution.
So we're talking with Dan Tombrink. He and I are very active with Breathe California doing this TV show. We're going to come back in 30 seconds and talk about more lung health issues that affect you.
What it feels like to have an asthma attack is, well, you can't breathe and you can't tell anybody that you're having an asthma attack because you can hardly talk. You can maybe say 1 or 2 words, but you can't say much else. Breathe California has helped me come in contact with more asthmatics and more people who have the same case as I do. It's important to me because I don't feel like I'm alone in the fight against asthma.
Welcome back. I'm Terry Trumbull. I volunteer for Breathe California, putting together this TV show with Dan Tombrink, who's our guest on the show, or the other way around. Who knows who's a guest. But Breathe California is the lung health organization for the state of California. If you have any information that you want, go to our website, www.lungsrus.org. or give us a call at 408-998-5865. That's where our office is, in the Willow Glen area of San Jose. So lots of issues to confront here. 70% of our pollution in the Bay Area comes from transportation.
And it's funny that you bring that up because I was just about to get to the part where we were ask you, what do you feel like is the biggest threat right now in terms of poor air quality? And I think I recently did the personal eco footprint, and I was startled to see, because I drive so little and I drive a fuel efficient vehicle, I was just shocked to see that it was still by far the highest portion of my footprint.
So what time period did this ecological footprint cover?
I just did a general assessment for my current state of how I was right now in my life, and then I also did an assessment for about a week or two period so I can work on ways of cutting my energy use down by 20%.
The reason I'm asking is everything you say is right, but you taken on a plane trip in the last 2 weeks?
No, I haven't traveled by air in 10 years. So that's
So my daughter took a plane trip when she was a student at Santa Clara, and then had a class with us, and was aghast that the plane trip was more pollutants than the entire rest of her year. It was, what have you done in the last year?
Oh, so she was one of the travelers that had to calculate that portion then, okay.
Yeah, but what we don't realize is what an ecological impact planes are. One of the problems is that we have an international treaty regulating airplane emissions, and it is very weak.
Yeah, or not enforced at all.
Well, there's something of a problem with that, but we had about a year ago a stupendous issue. Europe, to combat climate change, to reduce their health effects from planes, put standards in place and required it on all planes registered in Europe.
Oh.
And they told the U.S., you can't come here unless you meet these standards. And the Obama administration went nuts, and not to our credit, we got them to back off and agree to let the worst American planes, meaning
Still land there, huh?
yeah, that dump far higher emissions than do
The more
a
recently.
plane from Italy or Austria will do, because the emissions are far worse, and anybody that lives under the flight path to San Jose knows it on noise.
Yeah.
I mean, getting away from Breathe California,
Yeah,
but
the
the
noise
fact
pollution
is,
too.
most people don't realize that 5,000 people had to be moved out of their homes because planes were so noisy south of the airport. And that's why there's this enormous area between 87 and Coleman Avenue south of the airport that doesn't have any homes.
Just a vacant area,
So one of the things I just wanted to talk about is Breathe California is made up of 5 separate nonprofits, all with the same name. So our sister organizations are, there's one in Daly City, which covers San Mateo, San Francisco, and the North Bay. Our chapter,
Upper Peninsula.
yeah, the peninsula is divided in half, with Santa Clara County and San Benito in our area, and then we also have the East Bay in the chapter that's called Breathe California of the Bay Area. Then there's a Sacramento chapter which covers the Sacramento Valley, and one in LA that covers everything in Southern California.
That's good.
As well as a Monterey Bay chapter which covers Santa Cruz and Monterey counties.
Salinas as well, or?
Yeah, which is actually the county seat. No, I guess it isn't. It's just by far the biggest in Monterey County. So we're playing a pretty significant role locally with all of them doing things similar to the 150,000 people that we helped
Treating
last year.
existing problems.
You know, and I mean, when I say treating, there's a variety of things. I mentioned the indoor air quality thing, which is actually preventative. But as an example, this past summer we had an asthma camp. You know, when I went to camp as a kid, maybe you did the same thing.
I got asthma when I went to camp.
Yeah, well, I mean, and maybe you have liked this. You know,
It was a big trouble for me when I was little going to camp.
Well, you've highlighted the problem. We put on a separate camp for asthma. So
they didn't know how to deal with it back then. Us asthma kids, they didn't really know what to do with us. They had to figure it out as they went, you know.
Well, it's scary. We didn't start keeping statistics on asthma until 4 or 5 years ago. states, and I guess it's 10, given that his successor was termed out, but State Senator Byron Scheer carried a bill requiring that asthma be collected statistics on, because asthma is basically an industrial disease. Until we started dumping crud like crazy in the air, burning oil and coal, we didn't have asthma. It's a product of air pollution and crud that we've been throwing in the air. In other words, 1800, nobody ever heard and knew of the disease.
So even when I was mentioning the 70s being a 60s baby, that kind of made sense then, I guess.
Yeah.
That was during
It's
the time
a
before we got the
real
real strong
reaction.
legislation in place.
Well, you mentioned something I just want to highlight there is we have a federal law, the Clean Air Act, passed in 1970 that requires state to control air pollution. But the fact is California started earlier, and the Bay Area was 1956.
Oh.
What is now called the Bay Area Air Quality Management District got put into place because our pollutions are bad enough. And it's real significant because the air quality in San Francisco is sensational.
Yeah.
Mark Twain said, I never went through a winter as bad as a summer in San Francisco. The Central Valley is so hot, it sucks all the air through San Francisco.
Yeah.
And they never have an air quality problem. To their credit, they joined with us and people being polluted as far away as Santa Rosa to the north and all of the East Bay to say we need to attack all these problems. That the unhealthy air in San Jose is a product not just of people here, but also of what they're doing with their cars or their fireplaces in San Francisco and San Mateo.
So if you're getting wind off the bay, then in San Francisco, it's going to make a difference. It's going to make it a little bit better there. And in situations, the valley just doesn't have that. They got the
Right.
by
I mean,
mountains. It's just a trap for bad air.
Well, and that's why we've had in the winter
Spare the air
prohibitions.
days.
Yeah, there's spare the air because the air doesn't move. When you burn a fireplace, all the air stays around. You're poisoning yourself and your neighbors. If there was enough wind to move it out, that'd be different. But remember, the wind doesn't get rid of the pollution. In the summer, it's not in this area, but the Pinnacles has got the worst air quality. And that's because the pollutants in the air react to cause ozone.
Yeah.
And so we're in a national park 60 miles south of there, and they have horrible air quality. It is blowing out of San Francisco, but it's still, with heat, causes ozone. So you need an organization like Breathe California to go out and fight and scratch to do things. So
Because preventative is where everything's really going to be at in the future. It's all preventative measures. We don't want to keep treating diseases after they happen, right? Isn't that the key?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the problem is that our whole system, healthcare system, is oriented to you walk in with some problem and they fix it.
Give you some medicine and tell you take a pill and call me in the morning.
You know, I've been involved with Breathe California for 41 years now, and nobody funds prevention for the most part. They do give you money to help people with asthma, allergies, whatever breathing difficulties, but it's all after the fact rather than helping prevent it. And that's what you and I have been trying to do on the show.
And Obamacare even has directed a little bit of that as well.
Well, it's going to be
the
helping.
Affordable Care Act is actually what
Yeah.
we should call it. And they're trying to direct that a little more to prevention and get rid of some of the inefficiencies, and that way it would help. And I think that this is the same kind of thing. Breathe California is a great organization to do that.
So one of the things I want to highlight is Breathe California does annual Clean Air Awards, and I might brag that the show has been the winner of it in the past for education.
Nice.
You know, perhaps a little self-serving since it is a Breathe California TV show. But educating people really makes a difference. And at our annual Clean Air Awards 2 years ago, the regional administrator of EPA came and said, 88% of the public wants healthier air. You know, it's a real important issue and the public understands it. 82% said we're running out of fossil fuel, that we need to develop alternative energy and start to be serious about energy conservation. but it was only about 55% who supported climate change.
Interesting.
You know, that it was a real problem. And then he said, who cares? They're the same problem.
Yes.
You know, whether you think we
go
got a
hand in
climate
hand.
change problem, we know that the fossil fuel, the oil and coal that we're
Putting
burning,
CO2 up in the atmosphere.
well,
right?
it does for climate change, but it's also creating nitrous oxides in the ozone and the particulates that are rotting our lungs. And
The
so,
particulates being the bigger particles, correct?
no, it's actually the other way around.
Oh, that's good
Your
for the
lungs are
audience to know.
prepared to cope with the big stuff. It's the little particles
'Cause they
that
get
your
through the
lungs can't get
passages
rid of.
easier. Yeah.
So it's a real serious problem. But the point I'm making is with everybody in the Bay Area, we don't meet federal standards, let alone the state standards, which are significantly say that you're not going to be healthy unless it's a lot lower. In other words, state standards are more difficult to meet. And we're not anywhere near it, nor are we protecting kids. There's a state law that says you have to meet even stricter standards for kids from 0 to 15. Nothing they can do about the fact that their lungs are really susceptible to damage as they're growing up. Yet we haven't implemented that because we're not meeting the federal standards. So you have federal standards high, you have the state standards in the middle, and the standards for kids are even less. So we got about 30 seconds left. Why do you enjoy working with Breathe California on the TV show? In 2 or 3 sentences.
I love working with Terry, actually. It's a very big experience for me. It's a pleasure to be able to work with Terry Trumbull. He's a big figure in the
Yeah, that's the
environmental community.
lousy answer. You're supposed to say it's to protect the public's health and we're
Well,
worried about everything.
I could just leave him with a message like VMTs: drive less, vehicle
Okay.
miles
Well,
traveled.
your message time is over. We're out of time. Next week, we'll have another exciting show for you here on Breathe California TV. We'll hope you'll tune in, watch us, and hopefully learn something. See you then.